Greetings and welcome back to D. Jaeger Woodworking. It's been quite a while since my last post. Here's hoping 2023 allows me a little more time in the workshop. With that said, I hope you find this video on the diamond pattern cutting board informative and entertaining. While making this board, I couldn't help but be reminded of a court jester. Maybe that's why it turned out to be one of my favorite projects. So, let's head into the shop. Fools to the left of me, jokers to the right. For this project, I'm using maple and walnut stock that are roughly 18 inches long by 2 inches wide by 1 inch thick. However, I will perform some basic sanding to ensure that each piece is as close as possible to identical measurement. This is a project that requires precision, and it can get away from you pretty quickly if not keeping your measurements in check. I'm sending each piece of stock through and sanding both sides until I reach a uniform thickness. Then I'll turn each piece 90 degrees and run them through the drum sander on edge. The specific width and thickness dimensions aren't so much the issue as their uniformity and relation to each other is. I want the thickness of each piece to be exactly half of the width of each piece. This is going to be crucial for the diamond pattern that will develop later. Now that each stock piece has been sanded to size, I want to glue each walnut piece to a maple piece. As the video speed is increased, note that I am not placing glue between every piece. Ultimately, I will end up with 5 separate glue ups. After an hour of glue drying time, I come back to remove the partially dried squeeze out. It's much more difficult to remove if I allow it to fully cure. After 24 hours, I remove the clamps and run each piece through the drum sander. I want to take shallow passes. I'll run each piece in the same direction, flip them over, and run them through again. Then I'll rotate each piece 90 degrees and run them through, flip them over, and then run them through again. My goal is only to remove glue and very little wood material. Again, I need to keep my dimensions in check. I want to inscribe cut lines in the end of each piece, running from the middle of each piece to the corresponding middle side. These marks will help me set up the table saw for the 4 cuts that I need to make. For the cuts, I need to zero out my angle gauge, attach it to my raised saw blade, and set the angle at 45 degrees. Now you can better see how the inscribed lines will help me set up the saw blade for my cuts. I'm taking a 45-degree cut from each corner of my glued stock. Note that each piece is oriented in the same direction for these cuts. I've also labeled the end of each piece to keep track of their orientation for the next glue up. It would be a little unsafe to attempt to run the pieces through by rotating them 90 degrees, but since the two previous cuts now give me a right angle, I can adjust my table saw blade back to 90 or 0 degrees and make the final two cuts. What we're ultimately left with are these 5 square pieces of stock. In order to double the width of the final cutting board, I'm cutting each of the pieces of stock in half, or to a length of 9 inches, and then giving them one final run through the drum sander to make sure that my pieces are as perfectly square as possible. Here's where the arrangement of the next glue up begins to reveal the diamond pattern. While not fully, it will present itself after the next round of sanding and during the final glue up phase. Here's where another part of precision takes place. I need to make sure that these pieces don't shift out of alignment during the glue up. So I'm using 2 pieces of MDF with parchment paper and some downward clamps to keep everything true. After 24 hours, it's basically a rinse and repeat process by running each side of this glue up through the drum sander. Again, taking extremely shallow passes so as only to remove the residual glue. I'm now going to square up one edge. However, after this squaring cut, I realize that I really need to switch from the ripping blade to my crosscut blade. Always follow the safety measures for your equipment and unplug your saw when switching out blades. I can now begin making measured cuts of 7/8 of an inch. It is this cut that will determine the final thickness of your cutting board. However, I'm going for a 12 inch by 12 inch overall cutting board dimension in the end, and figuring in the amount of material lost by the width of my saw blade during each cut, 7/8 should give me 10 equal pieces after the cut. For the last few cuts, I switch back to using the table saw fence. Never make a cut you're uncomfortable with. And finally, by flipping every other piece in opposite direction, we see the diamond pattern revealed. Now, we just need to perform the glue up. And as stated from the beginning, this will require some precision. These diamond tips need to be in perfect alignment. While the video has been sped up for time, know that I am checking each piece's orientation to the one before it, and will give one final check before applying any clamping pressure laterally and vertically. After another 24-hour dry time, this board is headed to the drum sander one final time to true up both surfaces. After a couple of passes, however, I noticed I was getting sander burn. I could just keep running this through, but nope, I can't let it go. It's time to investigate. After taking a look inside the sander, I definitely have some dust and glue buildup that needs to be removed. First, I'll use my shop vac to remove as much dust and debris as I can. Then, using a rubber abrasive sanding stick, I'll run it along the surface of the drum to remove the dust, glue, and other particles that are embedded in the sandpaper. While I'm at it, I might as well vacuum the rolling platform too. And with that cleaning job accomplished, I can see a marked difference in the board after running it through the drum sander. The burn marks begin to dissipate. My use of the drum sander is meant to true surfaces, but it's definitely not a tool for finish sanding. I use a pencil to lightly scribe a mark across the surface of the board so that I know that I've adequately covered each area during the sanding process. I'll then flip the board and repeat the process with each grit of sandpaper, starting with 120 grit and progressing with 180, 240, and 320. Between each grit of sandpaper, I like to raise the grain by lightly spraying the surface of the board with water. I then let the board dry fully and move to the next sanding grit. For you other woodworkers out there, what are your thoughts on raising the grain? Necessary? Unnecessary? Between each sanding grit, or only before the last? Leave a comment below. I'd be very interested in your technique and justifications. Before the last round of sanding, I want to add my Woodworking logo. I use the laser option on my CNC machine for this task. And after the last of the sanding dust has settled, it's time to get this board into a nice, food-safe mineral oil bath. We'll let this strip dry overnight and then finish it up with some cutting board conditioner in the morning. It's a new day, and it's time to finish this diamond cutting board. I'm using a cutting board conditioner that contains a good amount of beeswax. While you can just rub this on the board with a cloth or towel, I decided to use my heat gun to partially melt some of the beeswax for better penetration. And lastly, I'm going to add some feet. I get a lot of comments about why I use rubber feet. My typical response is that for thicker boards of 1.5 inches or more, I don't typically add feet, but rather add finger grooves in the side for easier gripping. For boards less than 1.5 inches, I typically add feet to elevate them enough to get your fingers under the board. Also, sometimes it's a customer preference. For me, either way is fine. And with one final rub down, this board is complete. I really like the diamond pattern. It still reminds me of a jester. The final dimensions of the board were 12 inches by 12 inches by 3/4 of an inch. With the feet, it's right at an inch tall. I hope you found this video educational, entertaining, and relaxing. If you have a moment, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. As always, thanks for watching.